So let's face it, we all know the Atlanta Falcons took one of the biggest L's in NFL history earlier this year when they blew a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl to the New England Patriots. Kind of depressing to see such a fall after having such a big lead going almost into the fourth quarter, but life happens. Now, the Atlanta Falcons are in a predicament known as the Super Bowl curse, meaning if you lose the Super Bowl, the next season doesn't really fare well for you. In fact, I have the numbers to suggest that the Atlanta Falcons will not break the Super Bowl curse. So this is going to be split up into three different parts. First, we're going to go over the mathematics of the Super Bowl curse and how not many teams can get to the Super Bowl, much less win the Super Bowl the year after they lose it. Then we're going to look over the past 9 teams to have lost the Super Bowl and see their follow-up season. And then we're going to look at the Atlanta Falcons roster and suggest where they're going to rank this year, whether they're going to be a playoff team, NFC Championship contender, Super Bowl contender, Super Bowl winner. We're going to see how the Atlanta Falcons stack up and whether or not they are going to break this curse. I don't think so, but I'm going to back it up with the mathematics side of it all. So let's get started. Okay, so for part 1 of the mathematics lesson, I had tweaked some of the numbers, and here's why. The picture you're seeing right now comes from an NFL.com article highlighting all the teams that have followed the Super Bowl curse before last year. So the Carolina Panthers were not added into this photo because it was about them trying to beat the curse. Obviously, time has passed, and they didn't do that, so numbers had to be tweaked so they could be added onto this list. So the numbers you see on the right are 100% accurate with their new percentages and new totals. With that in mind, let's go ahead and talk about some of them. Finish below 500. You got a 1 in 5 chance of finishing below 500. 10 of the 50 possible teams have done so, including Carolina Panthers team of last year. They went 6-10. So there is a possible chance you could fall drastically in production. They were 15-1 when they played in the Super Bowl, and they're 6-10 the following season. That's not very good. However, some of these other ones are highly likely. Won 10-plus games. 32 of the possible 50 teams won 10-plus games the year after. Now, only one of them in the last 9 years did not make the playoffs while winning 10-plus games, but that's a different story we'll talk about later on. So 64%. You have a 64% or almost two-thirds chance of winning 10-plus games the year after losing the Super Bowl. Winning the division, 26 of the 50 teams. So 52% of you winning the division. Not too bad. Half a chance basically. You can make some improvement on that part. Missed the playoffs. Now with the Carolina Panthers adding onto this list, 15 of the 50 teams did not make it to the playoffs the year after. It's been kind of a weird scenario here. So 30% have not made it. However, that means 35 of the 50 teams have. So 70% have made it to the playoffs. That's some pretty good numbers for the Atlanta Falcons. That might be something that will be on their side going into this season. However, let's look extensively in my next photo here. Okay, so here comes part 2. Winning a playoff game. None of this gets changed with the Carolina Panthers added on because they did not make it to the playoffs. 17 of the 50 teams made it and won a playoff game. So 34%. That's about 1 1/3 odds that you get to the playoffs and win a playoff game. Not really going to fare well for you afterwards, though. 7 of the 50 teams that have lost the Super Bowl the following year returned to the Super Bowl. That's 14%. And let's think back to the Buffalo Bills, who lost 4 consecutive Super Bowls. So they take a lot of that list. And winning the Super Bowl after you lost the year before, 2 of the 50 teams that have done it won the Super Bowl. And it's very odd of the 2 teams that did it. The Dallas Cowboys of Super Bowl 6 after losing Super Bowl 5 to the Baltimore Colts, and the Miami Dolphins of Super Bowl 7 after losing to the Dallas Cowboys in Super Bowl 6. Don't ask me how that happened in consecutive seasons, but that's how it happened. So it hasn't happened in 43 Super Bowls. 43! That's just mathematics. But now let's go ahead and look at the past 9 teams and see how they fared in the competition of the Super Bowl curse. First, we have the 2008 New England Patriots. They went 11-5 and did not make the playoffs the year after they lost the Super Bowl. Now, this one's kind of a controversial one. I mean, I had to put it on the list here, but it's kind of stretching it because of what the 2008 season brought to the Patriots. They went 18-1 the year before. They almost went to the perfect season, lost the big game, lost the Super Bowl to the New York Giants. The following year, they went 11-5, but they didn't have Tom Brady. He tore his ACL. So the Patriots, all things considered, had a pretty good year without Tom Brady. They still had Bill Belichick as coach. They did tremendously well. The only reason they didn't make the playoffs is that there were some really good wildcard teams in there that went 12-4 and 11-5. The Baltimore Ravens just beat them out there. So they didn't win the division. Kind of controversial. It hurts to see them not make the playoffs, but all things considered, they did pretty well without Tom Brady here. 2009, we had the Arizona Cardinals. The year after they lost the Super Bowl to the Pittsburgh Steelers in dramatic fashion, they went 10-6. They lost in the divisional round to the Super Bowl champion New Orleans Saints. All things considered, it was kind of a down year from their Super Bowl year. They went 10-6, which is not bad. It was worse than their record the year before, but man, I mean, this team was still had a good chance of doing some damage. Kurt Warner, a tremendous quarterback. They did make the playoffs. They won a dramatic wildcard game against the Green Bay Packers, so that's good. However, they just weren't able to pull it off this year. They had to face a Drew Brees team that was confident of winning their first Super Bowl. So that was kind of a weird situation with Arizona also trying to get their first Super Bowl, and they just lost the year before. So that was a crazy situation. This team had a lot of chances to get it done. They just weren't able to pull it out and make big offensive stands, and that's why they lost this time around. They weren't able to make it back to the Super Bowl. Next, we have the 2010 Indianapolis Colts, who, after losing to the New Orleans Saints in the Super Bowl, went 10-6, lost in the wild card game to the New York Jets, who made it to the AFC Championship game. Indianapolis just was not as strong this time around. Peyton Manning did have some really good games this season. Obviously, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, so he made an impact. He threw a lot of touchdowns, but this team just was not able to grasp the momentum that they had going into the Super Bowl the year before. It was just kind of an off year. And while they did get 10-6, they were in a pretty weak division. So that was kind of easy for them. And they lost in the wild card round to the New York Jets. So not a strong performance from this time around. Very disappointing here. Next up, we have the 2011 Pittsburgh Steelers. After losing to the Green Bay Packers in the Super Bowl the year before, they went 12-4 the next season, losing in the wildcard game to the Denver Broncos. This season, like many of the next couple of seasons and teams, was not that bad for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They went 12-4, which is a pretty good record. It won the division, of course. But in the wild card, with many impressive teams, they had to play in the wild card with 12-4 record. They lost to the Denver Broncos, the Tim Tebow Denver Broncos in overtime. So, kind of a bad way to go out, honestly. 80-yard pass to Demaryius Thomas, anybody? Very disappointing for them to go home. They had a nice record, but in this situation, the Super Bowl curse really latched onto them in a very heartfelt way. So, not a good way to come back there. Now we have the 2012 New England Patriots. The year after losing to the New York Giants in the Super Bowl, they went 12-4 and lost in the AFC Championship game to the eventual Super Bowl champion Baltimore Ravens. Now, I really like this team from an offensive standpoint. You got Tom Brady in his prime. You got Brandon Lloyd doing great things. Wes Welker's breakout season. Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez. They had the receiver talent, but it just didn't work. It just didn't finish. And it's one of those times where Tom Brady lost in the AFC Championship game. It's happened a couple of times. The Denver Broncos a couple of years ago. But really disappointing to not see this team back in the Super Bowl. Could have been an interesting New England-San Francisco matchup, but they lost to their rival Baltimore Ravens team. It's been kind of a rival outside of the division for quite some time now. So this was a heartbreaking loss for them, but again, goes to show that that Super Bowl curse is very real. It can stop these teams from getting back to the Super Bowl. One of the farther teams to make it here so far, though. Here we are at the 2013 San Francisco 49ers. After losing the Super Bowl to the Baltimore Ravens, went 12-4 the next season, lost in the NFC Championship game to the eventual Super Bowl winner, Seattle Seahawks. This was a really devastating one to watch just because I remember it's being such a climactic game, so many great moments in that game in the final seconds, them barely missing that throw to Michael Crabtree and the epic rant of Richard Sherman afterwards. But yeah, Colin Kaepernick was in the spotlight at this point, as we all know, being a very good player. Had some very interesting aspects about him that not many quarterbacks of the time had, and now look at him in 2017 is very different. But man, this was a hard one to watch just because the San Francisco 49ers were looking to get back into relevancy, and the Super Bowl curse bit them in the ass with them barely missing the Super Bowl once again. So Super Bowl curse. It's a real thing, man. Now the 2014 Denver Broncos, after losing the Super Bowl to the Seattle Seahawks, went 12-4 and lost in the divisional round to the Indianapolis Colts. This one was pretty depressing to watch just because the Denver Broncos the year before had so many impressive records broken. Peyton Manning doing all the great things that he did in that season. I mean, just a fantastic year for him. Ultimately to lose in incredibly bad fashion 43-8 to the Seattle Seahawks. The year after, they still kept it up. They had the offensive weapons. They were starting to make that defense look pretty intimidating, which would get them a Super Bowl ring 2 years later, but they weren't able to defeat the Indianapolis Colts, which was pretty disappointing. I don't think many people had that going down, but the Denver Broncos lost. Indianapolis got pummeled in the AFC Championship game. The curse once again strikes. Here we are, the 2015 Seattle Seahawks, after losing in dramatic fashion in the Super Bowl to the New England Patriots, 1-yard throw. They went 10-6 the year after, lost in the divisional round to the Carolina Panthers, where they almost came back from a 31-0 deficit. Would have been even more impressive, the 28-3. In this situation, they were still a very good team. They were losing a couple of key pieces on defense. They weren't as strong as a cohesive unit. They've been kind of declining after that Super Bowl loss, but they still had many perks about them. And then going in there, they just got decimated in the divisional game. They really did try to come back. One of the most wild games I've seen of the decade, but they weren't able to do it. They weren't able to pull off the comeback the same likes of the year before to get into the Super Bowl 49, but yeah, hard one to watch here. The curse really did strike on this one. It seems like Seattle is maybe on the decline. We'll see. And finally, for our teams here, we have the 2016 Carolina Panthers, who went 6-10 last season, obviously did not make the playoffs. This is one of the sharpest declines I have ever seen from a Super Bowl losing team to the next year. They went 15-1, Cam Newton, MVP of the season, going into the Super Bowl. They lose in not a dramatic game in Super Bowl 50, and then just this sharp decline. Cam Newton had terrible numbers the year after losing the Super Bowl, like terrible numbers, and they went 6-10 for a reason. They were not able to be winners in clutch situations. They seemed like they didn't care as much. I know that division is very wonky a lot. The NFC South is very wonky as to which team's going to win the division every year. But man, going from 15-1 to 6-10, that curse struck hard. And Carolina's going to have to put in a lot of effort in order to bounce back this year. But man, that is a pure definition of the Super Bowl curse hitting a team so quickly. So what do I think the 2017 Atlanta Falcons will bring to the table? This is a weird question because I had high expectations, and then I'm looking at the preseason like, I don't know if this team's going to be able to give a stronger performance as they were the year before. I don't think Matt Ryan's going to be MVP again. I have that good feeling that that's not going to happen. No offense to him. He's still going to be a great quarterback and all. There's been some struggles in the defense, it looks like, from the preseason. They haven't been able to stop. They haven't been able to get good drives. They blew a lead in their first preseason game. How fitting. But to me, this has just been a very weird preseason to see. The predictions I had when the NFC South video came out are different from what I have right now. Right now, I have them at 10-6, making the wild card, but I don't see them getting past the divisional round right now. There's still a lot of time to fix up the kinks. They have Julio Jones, who is an amazing receiver, my favorite receiver in the game, the best in the game, in my opinion. Matt Ryan's still a great quarterback. They have Devontae Freeman running back. Their defense was slightly better than the one before, but they're not going to be able to replicate the offensive style that they had last year. They had so many great things in the offensive weaponry last year. They're not going to be able to duplicate that this time around. So I see them going 10-6 and not breaking the Super Bowl curse. So there you go. That's the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed this one, like it. Of course, comment below your thoughts. Do you think the Atlanta Falcons will break the Super Bowl curse? Do you think they'll be the 8th team in NFL history to come back to the Super Bowl after losing it the year before? Will they be the 3rd team in NFL history to win the Super Bowl after losing it the year before? Or do you think they won't even make the playoffs? It'll be interesting to hear your guys' opinions because we do care about your opinions. So comment below your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel. We're about 1/3 of the way into my ultimate goal of 10,000. We want to get bigger than that, but that's like the foreseeable goal I see right now. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe for more NFL content. The NFL season is 6 days away right now, 6 days away from the upload of this video. So I'm really excited for that. We're going to upload a couple more NFL videos before that, and then we'll have our recaps. Thursday night football, Sunday night football, Monday night football. We'll be doing a lot of football coverage throughout the year, so stay tuned for that. It's going to be a banger year for the NFL and for the Bottom Line View. So for Dylan, I appreciate you guys watching this video. Peace.